Hear the sound, create a word, learn to read. Today's fourth episode of our 5-part series is titled 21st Century Learning and How Elkonin Boxes Are Able to Improve Your Instruction that is tied to research methods of learning. I've developed 4 principles to follow, but these principles have come from many different minds and experiences and papers that I've read and classes I've taught and lessons I've created. And I believe if you follow these 4 principles, you can use whichever literacy method is best for you as an educator. I like to call it D.E.L.T. Design, Engage, Learn, Teach. We want to talk a little bit about design. There are many different design methods. In our last week's episode, we discussed a little bit about the whole language versus phonemic language debate, which is called the reading wars. And I wanted to bring up 2 different designs and methods and approaches to literacy this week. One called balanced literacy and structured literacy. And these are describing teachers and how they teach in their class and what essential language, phonology, sound, syllables, etc. So when we're going into this, one of the most popular balanced reading approaches is called Reading Raz Kids. And I want to take a little look at this. So we're going to open this link and look at this balanced reading program. So in this balanced literacy, you can see there's many literacy models that are composed of 3 major components: reading workshops, shared reading, and we can go down, and this is an entire system that many schools, dioceses use, districts use to teach. So it is outlined, many teachers are using it. It has books that are associated with it. It has a vocabulary section, a writing section, and you can see that it breaks down in a balanced approach, not just literacy, whole language or read alouds, but you're also looking at phonemic awareness and high frequency words. And you can go back and look through all of this and realize that this is really a blend of those 2 types of approaches from the reading wars. They know the science of reading. They have realized that there is more to reading than just putting a child in front of a book and allowing him or her to read. In the science of reading framework, teachers start reading instruction for beginning readers with the foundations of language in a structured approach. The method begins with how individual letters represent sounds, and then how those sounds blend together or combine to make words. And at the same time, teachers are helping students build their vocabulary and their knowledge about the world through read-alouds and conversations. At the last stage, students are taught to blend these distinctive parts of the methods together, allowing them to read higher-leveled books or texts. Research has shown that most teachers in the United States weren't trained in the science of reading framework, and instead teachers practice balanced literacy. This approach is more teacher-centered and does not have a defined schema integrated into its framework to ensure that the use of phonics instruction is being taught or an explicit system is being used. And what we want to really view is that out there's all this discussion about whether or not it's working, but teachers are already doing it. And in my approach here in this episode, in the D.E.L.T method, I want to focus more on how are we designing. And a really important design is universal design for learning. And this framework, it improves and optimizes teaching and learning for all people based on a scientific insight. Look at is that when she was discussing that, we was talking about diverse students. So why have a reading war about what is right or what is wrong, when really we're trying to look at diversity and open up our minds to approach all students differently. One student, one approach might work, one student, another one might work. But if we start to look at how to design for all students to have an individualized approach to literacy that really works for them, we want to start to develop a way to engage students. Student engaging, to me, is designed to engage. Go from D, how to about, because one of the most important people in the room, yes, it's a student, but the other one is the teacher. And how do you integrate theater, musical, visual arts, dance, even the digital media I'm using today to engage students and teach teachers how to be effective communicators? So when we're looking at this, we want to just teach teachers too, how do you effectively communicate? How do you use your voice? How do you present your material? What tools are you using? You are the entertainer, you are the producer, the director in your room, and are you helping yourself engage these students? The way that kids interact with that technology, they're not just passively looking at it, but it is part of how they create their own learning methods. And what that takes us to learn in that D.E.L.T acronym. And what is to learn? To gain knowledge or understand a skill by studying instruction or an experience. And we can go back to Skinner. And Skinner stated long ago that a learner does not passively absorb knowledge from the world around him, but must play an active role in it. So learners learn by doing, experiencing, and engaging in trial and error. Making mistakes sounds a lot like the growth mindset. And I want to then just bring in that idea of cognitive learning theory, because when we're talking about learning, we need to also think about blended learning, communicative competence. When are students learning, and how do we know they're learning, and how are we engaging them? And are we using different methods and blending what we're thinking about and how we're thinking of approaching these students to really make sure that each one of them has the competence and can assess themselves, and we can assess them that they actually have learned. And the last one is teach. T. What is teaching? Teaching can be defined as engagement with learners to enable their understanding and application of knowledge, concepts, and process. It includes design, content, selection, delivery, assessment, and reflection. Well, that's the definition. But in blended literacy approach that uses D.E.L.T, I've emphasized a number of bullet points, but I want you to see that within each of these bullet points, there is thoughtful instruction, there's phonemic awareness, there's studying of the word, but there's also reading quality literature, in doing teacher read alouds, integrating of writing instruction, vocabulary study, and emphasis in reading, and integration of guided instruction, and also an integration of multimedia tools. So this is really a blended, balanced approach, blending not just what methods of literacy are you using, but what tools are you using. And how does this translate to all these episodes? Because these are about Elkonin Boxes and how to use those 4 principles when teaching with the boxes. Activity engages students with his or her voice and ability to guide students through the process of learning. And then 4, teach students to read and write using Elkonin Boxes by using any approach, but based in a structured and researched method of instruction. So next week's episode is the final episode, and we're going to outline everything that we've learned. We're going to learn how to incorporate the use of Elkonin Boxes in a lesson plan and demonstrate how to use D.E.L.T when instructing